So I knew that if I could like really front load the sacrifice and just go hard for literally 3 years, it was 3 years is what it took me to hit FI, that I could then be set up for the rest of my life and kind of do what I wanted. And like there's so many other people that I saw going the entrepreneurship route where they were more in control of their income. And I'm sure that's probably a huge reason why you have a lot of agents following you guys, because they want to be in more control of their income. So
increasing the gap, you were making more income, but then also you were keeping your expenses the same. So can you talk about that part? How does one keep their expenses the same when they get married, when they maybe have a kid, when they are moving, or etc.?
This is the big misconception in just the personal finance sphere in general, is that too many people just try to go for the looks and stuff way beforehand. They start driving the Porsche, they start getting expensive jewelry, they start seeing these beautiful homes and think that they need to have a beautiful home. It's like, no. But I think a big mistake I see in a lot of roles that are 1099 is people do not think about their financial futures. Please start setting aside money. So maybe it's one deal per year. I just shove the full commission from that deal into some kind of retirement account for the future. Because I think a lot of agents, they just, they start small. They're making like 40K and then 100 and then 200 and then 500. And the whole time they haven't put $1 away for themselves. They're just buying the next level up car and the next level up house. And so unfortunately, I see so many people in this industry that I think, like you guys talked about, it's all about being flashy. And like people think that the flashier they are, the more money they're going to make. You're just setting yourself up for failure in the future if you're not investing in yourself.
Oh my gosh, Cody. So you reached financial independence at the age of 25, which is absolutely insane, and something that I know that people dream of, think that possibly it's not even possible. They're just like blown away by this. So I'm curious, how did you do it?
Loaded question. Happy to be here. But basically, I did it through a combination of what I like to call the cash flow FI approach and the nest egg FI approach. So I'm sure we have some crossover audiences here where there's some people who've heard of FIRE, financial independence, retire early. The typical way that people quote unquote FIRE is they build up this big investment portfolio. It's usually in the stock market. I'd say pretty small percentage of FIRE people are doing this through real estate. But so these FIRE folks, they're saving up a huge amount of money, investing in the stock market, which is for easy math, let's call it. They save up $1 million invested via the 4% rule, which is kind of the guideline, like the golden rule that all these FI people follow. You can pull 4% of that invested stock portfolio and live on it every year in perpetuity. So if you have $1 million invested in the stock market through your various retirement accounts and brokerage accounts, you can live on like 40K a year. Then there's this other camp, and this is probably where more of your people fall, and where I'm a little more enthusiastic and it's a faster path, is the cash flow FI approach. So with cash flow FI, you don't have to build up that like $1 million invested. You can just buy cash flowing assets or create cash flowing assets that then fund your lifestyle. So instead of, again, building up this $1 million thing to then pull $40,000 a year and live on, you can just figure out like, hey, I'm spending 40K a year. How can I get, I hate doing public math on a podcast. How can I get like 3,500-ish per month in semi-passive income to fund my lifestyle? So that could be via real estate. That could be via small business. That could be selling digital products. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. I kind of took those two approaches and melded them together. So when I was 25, I had 500K invested in the stock market between like my brokerage, all my retirement accounts. Then I also had 11 or 13, 11. I had 11 doors at the time that were cash flowing just over $3,000 per month. So between those two, I was set. I was like, I really don't have to work for money anymore. I just have to put in this very minimal amount of effort to manage my real estate portfolio. And then the stocks are like truly 100% passive on autopilot. So that's pretty much the story.
I have questions.
Okay.
There are people who are sitting out there and they're like, dude, at 25, he had $500,000 invested in the stock market. And they're sitting there and they're like, I'm 35 and I got about $5,000 in my, emergency fund bank account. So can you help us I want $500,000 invested in stocks tomorrow, please.
So I leaned heavy into entrepreneurship. I lasted a whopping 7 months in corporate America. I was actually a commercial real estate lender, little known fact. So I do have a real estate background a little bit, but it didn't last very long. I was just kind of a spreadsheet monkey, but I hated it. And I knew that I was reading all these podcasts, reading podcasts. Wow. I was listening to all these podcasts, reading blogs, watching YouTube videos. And like, there's so many other people that I saw going the entrepreneurship route where they were more in control of their income. And I'm sure that's probably a huge reason why you have a lot of agents following you guys, because they want to be in more control of their income. So I saw the path and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do entrepreneurship. Like, I don't want to I saw what the next 5-10 years looked for me in my regular job, and it sucked. I'm like, I can go from analyst one to analyst two, and then I can maybe become like a junior manager. And I could literally see my trajectory. I'm like, okay, I know exactly how much I'm gonna be making in 5 years from now if I stay on this path. So I went entrepreneurship. Long story short, I ended up getting really into digital products, like selling digital products on Etsy and Shopify, and then ebooks and online courses and all that stuff. My income jumped in those first 3 years of entrepreneurship. It doubled every year from like 96K to 192K to $403,000 from 22 to 25. So that is like a huge reason why I was able to stuff 500K into investment accounts. And a lot of that was growth as well. I mean, we've been in a raging bull market since I really started investing.
But then also it's all about living I'm scared of using this word frugally because people then get scared and thinking like, "Oh my god, I won't be able
Don't
to
turn
eat
this off. Yeah.
steak," like yeah.
Yeah.
I need steak. So it's also about like living smart and not getting out of your means when it comes to like cars and expense housing. So can you talk about how you were increasing the gap is what a lot of people say increasing the gap, you were making more income, but then also you were keeping your expenses the same. So can you talk about that part? How does one keep their expenses the same when they get married, when they maybe have a kid, when they are moving or etc.
This is the big misconception in just the personal finance sphere in general, is that people think when they hear the word frugality, they think deprivation, and they also think that it's permanent. They think that once you become frugal, there's like this gene, this thing that happens where you all of a sudden can't spend money for the rest of your life. Like, no, I was extremely frugal for 3 years. Those 3 years when my income went from 96,000 to 403,000, my expenses were $2,000 a month, $24,000 the entire time. And a lot of my friends, when I'm making 400K, they're like, why don't you get a nice car? Why don't you get a nice house? Why don't you do this and do that? I'm like, because I'm just front loading all these investment accounts and these rental properties. Like I want my money to work for me. And I knew like compound interest at that time. I was very fortunate to like learn about all this stuff when I was 18, 19 years old, reading entrepreneurship books and investing books and learning about like real estate, stock market, all this stuff. So I knew that if I could like really front load the sacrifice and just go hard for like literally 3 years. It was 3 years is what it took me to hit FI, that I could then be set up for the rest of my life and kind of do what I wanted. So that was the kind of the driving factor for me and why I didn't like upgrade my lifestyle. Like so many other people I have friends today who every single time they get a raise, they go and get a new car lease. I'm like, guys, I have a podcast. Like, can you just listen to one episode or just take one piece of advice? If you can live frugally for a couple of years, you can then get the Mercedes. You can get the McMansion later on once you have these cash flowing assets that can fund the lifestyle. But don't get those things flip flopped, because if you start driving the Porsche and you start getting the 4,000 square foot house before you have passive income coming in and before you're close to achieving financial independence, then you're just going to be stuck in this hamster wheel, stuck in this rut where you're forced to make X number of dollars every month because your fixed expenses are so high.
But Cody, I have 3 kids. I have a spouse. I work with luxury clients. I have to have the G-Wagon. What do you say to that?
Okay, so I'm not a realtor. First of all, I'll say that I think appearance does matter a little bit, but I don't think that means you have to absolutely break the bank. Like, there's some decent looking cars, as long as you're not driving a car that has like a different colored door panel and has rust all over it. I really don't think your client's gonna be like, wow, you know what? Shelby's driving a G-Wagon. I think that I'm going to work with her. Maybe she's just driving a really nice looking Hyundai Elantra. That could be fine as long as the car's not falling apart. Now, you guys can correct me if I'm completely off base here, but I mean, I'm a buyer. If my real estate agent showed up in not a luxury vehicle, I wouldn't think anything of it. Again, as long as the car isn't literally falling apart. But I just think that too many people just try to go for the looks and stuff way beforehand. They start driving the Porsche. They start getting expensive jewelry. They start seeing these beautiful homes and think that they need to have a beautiful home. It's like, no, if you can just literally hold off for a couple of years, then those things can come once you start building a little bit of those passive income streams, whether you want to go the cash flow FI route, which I'm guessing most of your listeners do, or you want to build up a nest egg and invest in the stock market and things like that. But front load the sacrifice. It's totally worth it.
Dude, there was a span of far too long where I ran into a tree at one point with my car, and it was like on the side where it knocked when I hit the tree. This is a whole different story, but when I hit the tree, it knocked off the door handle. And so I couldn't open that side of the car. Luckily, it wasn't the driver's side. And so there was a long span of time where I would roll up to like every appointment and like make sure that the side of my car was like facing away because I just didn't get it fixed. I was like, screw it. I don't want to do this expense right now or hike up my insurance. But anyway, I do think that there is a level of the and maybe listeners maybe question, your decisions if you are the person who's trying to get the Lexus and the big house and all that stuff. It's like, what's the real reason why? Because I think a lot of it comes from like a combination of insecurity and FOMO. And I think that if we're honest with ourselves and can peel back those layers, then, and exactly what Cody said, where it's like, make the sacrifice now for your future self. If you can prioritize that future version of yourself, then you can avoid the lifestyle creep and get to the financial independence goals super fast. But if you want to do it by the age of 25, you need to time travel, listen to this podcast in the future, and then just copy Cody. I'm curious, Cody, and Ali, we can go whatever direction you want after this. Can you talk a little bit more about your selling digital products? Because I'm so curious about what were you selling and what that whole thing looked like, because that's a huge amount of income in just a very short span of time.
So I have some examples pulled up just for your audience. And I'm going to ask you guys some questions. I'm going to turn the microphone around. So do either of you guys have like a listing presentation packet or like a buyer presentation packet, maybe for a new home that you're listing? Yes?
No, what's
probably?
that?
No?
Ali, no, no,
What's that?
We both do, yes.
Okay, okay. And I'm guessing a lot of your listeners do as well. If you're an agent, like you have things like these that you've either created yourselves, or maybe you have a template that your agency has given you that then you've tweaked. A lot of these things can be made into digital products. So for me, I obviously didn't go this agent route. I wasn't a real estate agent, but I see so many agents who are sitting on gold mines. And a lot of people, I mean, you guys would know the stats better than me, but a lot of agents like don't make like one sale in their first year. So like they're just kind of scrambling for income. But there's actually a lot of ways you can supplement your income as an agent using the resources you already have or have already created. So people can look this up if you're driving at the gym. Maybe if you're at the gym, you can look this up. Look up the Agent Site Shop. You guys can do this if you want. It's an Etsy shop. But this couple, they were agents, and they have all these beautiful templates that they put together. They have like listing presentations, buyer presentations, selling your home packet, why to choose me as your realtor, like kind of all of these different assets. And they probably knew that, hey, these assets are helpful to other realtors out there who maybe don't have their own ecosystem. They work with a brokerage or an agency that doesn't have this stuff. Let's try to sell this to other realtors. These guys again, it's just basically bundles of things that they're already using as realtors themselves, have made over 57,000 sales. Average price point is like, call it $20. These guys have made an extra $1 million on the side selling digital products specifically for realtors. Like that's all they sell. And it's stuff that they're already using. I saw that little exchange there, Shelby. But yeah, so there's so many opportunities out there. And another one for real estate investors, I've seen people who have just started crushing by selling their like BRRRR analysis spreadsheet, or it's like rental property cash flow calculator. These things that the investors are already using themselves. All you have to do is kind of white label it, templatize it, sell it to other people who might want that resource. So I think there's a lot of agents who might be sleeping on gold mines, especially if you're a spreadsheet nerd, or especially if you're someone who likes to dabble in Canva and create your own checklists and just nice things that you can hand to your clients. You might be able to just templatize that, throw it up in an Etsy shop or Shopify store or on your own website, wherever you want, and start making some additional passive income that way. So I thought this would be a more relatable example. Like this isn't what I sold. I sold a whole bunch of different stuff, but I think that this could really hit home. And again, it's called Agent Site Shop. It's just a really good example of a realtor couple who is just doing this fantastically.
This is so good. This I
you.
want to do this, and I told you this last time when we were together. I was like, I'm going to do this, and I haven't done it.
You should. Hire a VA if you can't, if you don't have time yourself.
Oh, Cody, I'm in the middle of all that right now.
I think I saw you were
hired,
posting
like,
about an EA.
Yes, and I hired the perfect one, Cody. And the next day, she was like, "Oh, the other job that I was applying for accepted me, so I'm going over there."
Oh,
I'm like,
perfect.
"No!"
Rushing.
Yeah, I'm crying still. But yeah, no, this is stuff that broker owners could do, like team leaders can do. Um, the one thing that I would say is it would be some upkeep, I think, just because of changes or maybe it's just recently with the NAR changes and stuff like that. So wordings has to be different, but overall, I can see this being very little upkeep, which is awesome. Um, so,
Might be
but the
worth the
agent site
upkeep for an
shop,
extra $1.2 million.
absolutely. So then, okay, so then you have all these checklists, the templates of canned emails, etc. Is this on this one specific website specifically, agent site shop? Is this part of Etsy or is this different? It seems like it's its own website.
No, this is, I mean, they might have their own website. I honestly don't know. I am an Etsy
Okay,
seller through and through. The reason I like Etsy is because you don't have to have your own audience, or you don't have to drum up your own traffic. Etsy is
that's what
very
I was going to
reliant
go.
on
Yep.
like keywords and SEO. So there's a bunch of tools. Like one I like is eRank. There's another one called Everbee, but they'll tell you search volume for different things. So you could type in like realtor to eRank and see, oh, like this realtor something something checklist is very popular. I actually have one of these. I'm going to templatize this, throw it in my shop, and then Etsy will bring the buyers to you. Etsy takes a small 6.5% fee, which for like a digital product, it's a no-brainer. Like I'm happy to give Etsy 65 cents on a $10 product. The handmade people are a little less enthusiastic about this stuff because if you're weaving baskets, it's not as passive. Like it's not like create it once, sell it 1,000 times. But for digital product sellers like myself, and hopefully like some of the listeners today, it's awesome. So that's why I'm a huge fan of Etsy. These guys are not associated with Etsy in any way. They just decided to set up an Etsy shop, probably for the same reasons I'm mentioning, because maybe they didn't have a big following. Maybe they just had like a small brokerage or a small agency, and they just decided, hey, we have these beautiful designs. Let's put it on a marketplace where there's 100 million people looking for this stuff.
That's exactly where I was going with this. Because if as soon as you start your own website, then it's a matter of marketing, right? Getting all the people to even know about your website and driving people there. Aside from Etsy, are there any other websites that do the work for you?
Amazon is okay, but for this type of stuff, Etsy is by far the winner for me. If you already have an audience or you're like a big broker or agent, you could set up like your own Shopify store. Or if you have a website, you could do like a WordPress plugin like WooCommerce. But if you're a newbie and you're just getting into this stuff, I'd say Etsy is the best place to start.
This is amazing and definitely something that I want to do, and I hope that one day I actually do because there's a lot of things that I'm like, "Damn, I wanna do this." But, I mean, my question to you is, what did you sell? That's just curiosity, I'm not sure it would help our listeners, but, like, what did you sell on Etsy?
So I sold things in the personal finance space because I have a personal finance background. I have a podcast, blog, whole nine yards. So that was a big one. I sold a bunch of spreadsheets. I sold templates. So think of like budget pay down things, like any kind of debt tracker, net worth stuff, side hustle stuff. Then I also sold like printable games. Like I was selling like Christmas games and Halloween games and like all these random games for different holidays and different events. I was selling invitations. I was selling calendars. I was selling planners. I was selling checklists, trackers, literally everything you could possibly think of. Spice jar labels. Like every single thing you could think of, Shelby, I was trying to sell in my Etsy shop. I had no like niche specificity. I was just seeing what would sell.
And were you the one actually in Canva or however you design it? Were you the actual designer or were you using VAs to design it?
At the beginning, I was doing everything myself. And then I started to hire on help as I started to make money. But no, at the beginning, it was just honestly a lot of sweat equity. The cool thing about something like digital products is it doesn't really require any upfront capital. It requires a lot of upfront time and labor. So it is just a lot of monotonous researching products, creating them in Canva. Some of them might flop, whatever. You move on to the next one. So I spent hundreds of hours designing products at the very beginning. This is like 2018. I had no money. That corporate job that I had, I started in June or July of 2018. So I'm doing this like in tandem with the corporate job. So I'm just like grinding nights, weekends, before work, after work. But I didn't have a lot of extra money because I just started working. I was 22 years old. So it was all me.
I want to switch to keeping expenses low, Cody, because you mentioned that you were living off $24,000 a year, $2,000 a month. How were you doing that? Because a lot
So
of agents
obviously,
like cannot fathom that, you know?
yeah. I'll break it down. And what surprises most people is when I started this $2,000 per month living, I was living in Boston, which is a pretty high cost of living city. And what I was doing, Me and a couple buddies from college, we rented a 3-bedroom in Dorchester, which is like a little off the beaten path. It's not like nice downtown Boston. It's $2,700, 3 bedrooms. I shared a room with my buddy, and we were so close to each other, like I could have rolled over and touched his hand while he was sleeping. But that meant I was paying $450 a month. Like our room was 900. We were splitting it. It was $450 a piece. So my housing in Boston was $450. I'm driving the same paid off car that I've been driving. I was very intentional about like not spending a ton of money going out to eat and going to the bar. And mind you, a lot of people might hear what I'm saying right now and they might say, well, I want the steak, or I like going out to the bar and socializing. I was still doing all that. I was just being more intentional. So if my friends invited me out to dinner at the time, I would like eat a big meal before I went out and maybe share an app. And like, I just wouldn't order a meal out, and I'm still hanging out. I'd still might get a couple drinks, whatever. But instead of spending $200 out, I'd spend 60. So like stuff like that just made a huge difference. And it's not like I was a hermit and didn't have a social life, but the housing thing I mentioned, plus the transportation, plus being pretty cognizant about food. I was also pretty frugal when we traveled. And honestly, if you can leave travel out of this, but if you can get those big three things right, that's where the average American spends 66% of their money on housing, transportation, and food. So if you can even just cut all those down by half, like there's another 33% of your spending pie that you've now reclaimed. So that's kind of what I did. And then after I moved out of Boston, that's when I started house hacking. So at that point, I was actually net positive on the housing, which was great. And I don't have to explain house hacking. Maybe I will real quick, just for those who aren't entirely sure. So we purchased a 3-unit house, and we had a split level duplex above us, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath each. Me and my then girlfriend, now wife, lived in the basement unit. And so we were actually bringing in like $500 to $800 a month while we were living there, which was awesome. So instead of having even the $450 housing expense, now we had like a $500 to $800 housing income, and still driving the same paid off car, still doing the same intentional spending with food. So that was how I was able to make it happen. And after we started house hacking, that's when we started to actually add a little bit into the travel budget. But because we had reclaimed some of that housing spend, now we had more money to spend on trips. So I was like still maintaining that $2,000 per month. I was pretty strict about that. Like I was like, oh man, like we're over this month. We're at 2,400. Let's dial it back next month. And yeah, it was those 3 years, but we were able to make it happen.
And at this point, had you married Lauren yet, or were still dating? If you're on a 50-50 split, it's time to rethink your brokerage. At eXp, the split is 80-20. And once you cap, you keep 100%. We show you how to get there faster. I'm Ali Garced, or Ali the Agent. My sponsor, Shelby Johnson, and I each close over 40 deals a year. We are full-time agents actively producing, and everyone in our upline is an icon agent. When you name us as a sponsor at eXp, you get full access to all of our systems and checklists and templates, our 200K GCI playbook to help you make 200K your first year, direct mentorship and direct access to us, no huge group calls. We also help agents add another stream of income, which is rev share. We will help you with all the tools and trainings you need to build revenue share that will help you retire early. If you're interested in building an actual business, book a call at theagentgoldmine.com. And at this point, had you married Lauren yet, or were still dating?
Yeah, we were dating. I'm trying to think. Like, when did we get married? No, we got married like 2 years ago. So this is like a lot farther along in the story.
Okay, nice. Yeah. So where I'm going with this is, how did that conversation start? Like, was Lauren always on board? Because that's where I see typically like is where people don't have like the meeting of the minds is when one is a lot more frugal than the other. And so how did you get over that, if there was ever any difference?
That's a good question. I will admit I was incredibly lucky to, one, just get introduced to all this stuff so early, and two, to get introduced to Lauren so early. So when we started dating, I was 19 and she was 17. Nobody who's 17 years old has expensive habits. Maybe you do if you're a Kardashian, but like most people don't. You're not used to going out to eat. You're not used to driving a fancy car. You're not used to living in a luxury apartment. So it's very easy when the baseline is like way down here to not hit lifestyle inflation. It's when you start dating later on that maybe, you're in your 40s, and again, I can't speak to that. I wasn't in that circumstance. If you're, in your 40s and you've already lived in a really nice apartment for a long time and you already have all these luxuries, it's going to be a lot harder to crawl your way back to the ground floor where I started at. But if you're young listening to this, or maybe just haven't let lifestyle inflation hit you too much, you have a huge advantage because your fixed expenses are so low. So I was incredibly fortunate that I learned about this stuff super early, met Lauren super early on. So she was on board the whole time. I'm like, hey, like, I was such a nerd. I like had spreadsheets and like, look, like we can retire in 10 years. Like if we do this, this is, the simple path to wealth. This is like the shockingly simple math behind early retirement, Mr. Money Mustache articles, all this crazy stuff. And she was just like, sounds good.
So with all this, because now you have a podcast and a personal brand, you were just the speaker, one of the speakers at Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, Rubicon, which is how Ali and you met. How did you transfer this like focus on building the lifestyle to focus on building the brand? Or was it all at the same time? Can you talk a little bit about the brand building and content and your presence online, all that stuff?
Yeah, great question. So I think what's awesome, and I'm so glad I did it now. Before I was like kind of embarrassed, but I started documenting in 2018. So right at the beginning of this journey, I started my blog and my podcast. So people can go back and listen to very early podcast episodes. It's kind of hilarious. I'm way worse at speaking. Some of my opinions have changed as well, but I think I announced my net worth, not announce my net worth, like I was shouting it from the rooftops, but I mentioned it in one of the early episodes and it was like 75K. And we just recently did an episode, my co-host Justin and I, where our combined net worths exceeded 5 million and we got like 2 million downloads. So it's kind of been really cool to track the whole journey. And so to answer your question, it wasn't a very intentional decision like, oh, now I have this like financial prowess and all these accolades. Now I'm going to start my personal brand. It was kind of like I'm just tracking what I'm doing the whole time. Because when I started this journey, when I was like 22 is when I like really started making money and was able to buy things like stocks and real estate. There weren't that many other people who were in my age demo to look up to. It was all, this is going to sound horrible, it was all old people who were like in their 30s or 40s who were talking about like financial independence. And I'm like, well, this isn't as applicable to me as a 22-year-old. Like I wish I had someone who was maybe 25, a couple years ahead of me, who I could follow in their footsteps because they're just maybe a little closer to me and like their lifestyle. And again, they might not have the lifestyle inflation and their earning capacity might be more similar to mine. So I was like, I kind of want to pave the road and document the journey for those who are a couple years behind me, be the person that I wish I had during my journey. And so that's why I started documenting everything 7 years ago, back in 2018.
Through that documenting, the podcast is still going. Is the blog still going? Okay.
I mean, it still exists, but I don't write anymore.
Oh, you don't write anymore. Okay. So that was going to be my question is, what have you seen since you've been doing this for 7 years and sharing the journey? What do you feel like is the best, most impactful, piece of content that you continually put out? I see on YouTube, it looks like you're like 100% shorts, which I'm really interested in that as well. So just like any of that.
I am not a social media guy. So the reason why all my YouTube is shorts and the reason why all my Instagram and TikTok is just like lazy shorts is because I'm lazy. Like I am not a content first type of entrepreneur or creator. Actually, the reason why my main business, Gold City Ventures, is like as big as it is because we focused relentlessly on building email list. So we have like in that business, we have 180,000 people on our email list. And that's through a combination of SEO, affiliates, paid ads. Social is a very small component of how I make money in terms of lead flow. So I'm definitely the wrong guy to ask if you're asking like how to blow up a personal brand. My personal brand has just kind of grown by sharing my journey and people thinking what I'm doing is cool.
Dude, no, we're going to pivot hard based on that answer. 180,000 people on your email list is insane. Like that is so cool. And you should be wildly proud of that. So when you were building that list, can you talk about where was it a single source? Was it multiple sources? I know you mentioned SEO, affiliates, paid ads. So, and then what was the intended usage with that email list that you built?
So yeah, for that business, Gold City Ventures, basically what we did was back in 2019, after myself and I partnered with Julie Berninger, who was another financial podcaster in the space, but we both had like some side hustle success. So I had success with blogging and freelancing and some digital product success. She had done digital products and blogging. And so we're like, let's launch 3 courses at once and kind of teach people what has been working for us. That was a horrible mistake. One of the courses, the freelancing course, just flopped. Like nobody really wanted that. It was whatever. Spent hundreds of hours building it, spent a lot of money on editing and things like that. The blogging one chugged along for a little bit, probably like a year or so. Then we ended up shutting it down. But the digital products course, for whatever reason, people were just so interested in this side hustle and like seeing our success. And I'm sure you guys know, like people will probably come up to you saying, "Oh my gosh, like your success as a realtor," and they'll just ask you a million questions. How did you do it? And so after enough one-on-one mentorship of just giving people free advice, we were like, okay, let's actually commoditize this thing and build like a process, build a flow. Like this is exactly how we think of product ideation. This is how we actually go and create the products in Canva. This is how we do marketing. This is how we do sales, yada, 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 which then eventually evolved into a whole course, community, huge template shop. And that's, yeah, so that was kind of the intention of why we started building that email list, was to just get people who were interested in the side hustle, who wanted to like, who didn't want to DIY it. They wanted a little more of the helping hand approach, and bring them into our ecosystem, to whether that was buy the course, join the membership, buy templates from us, whatever. But that was the intention of the list.
And so I am not good at email. I'm terrible. Can we talk further into the platform that you use for email, cadence, frequency, length, all of that?
Yes. Okay. So we use Kit, previously called ConvertKit. What I'll say is the most important thing, because I don't know if you guys have talked about it on the podcast before, but even as an agent, it's very important to have an email list, in my opinion. I mean, blasting out just like the generic content that your brokerage might feed you is not enough. Like if you can add a little more personality, a little more flair, like get people interested in you and following you specifically, like, oh my gosh, an email from Ali. She always has that like funny thing about like the properties that are, you know, on sale in the market today, whatever that thing might be. Like get people interested in opening emails from you, because the more value you deliver, like if you constantly just kind of, it's an ask. Every single email is an ask or a sales pitch. People are just going to either send you to spam, or they're not going to open you anymore. So I know you didn't really ask this question, but I just want to talk about like email in general. You want people to think like, oh my gosh, like this is like one of my best friends sending me an email. I'm so excited to open this. This is like, whether it's funny or informative or whatever. So like it's always value first. And where a lot of people make mistakes is it's just, join my newsletter or some generic CTA, call to action like that. Where you could maybe like really outshine and outperform talking to your realtors is if you have something specific, like let's say you're in a specific market and maybe you have this like, here are the hottest zip codes to invest or to buy in this market. And it's like a PDF, and someone trades you their email address to get a copy of that PDF. It's a value exchange. You're not just like begging someone to join your newsletter. So when I think about building email, it's always about like, I want the person to be so excited to hand me their email address because I'm giving them so much value with whatever the free lead magnet is that I'm giving them. And then continue to give them value in the like nurture emails, which is what they're called, to come. So like you'll have like a welcome sequence, like, hey, I'm Ali, I'm your go-to agent. Like here's what I specialize in, and then maybe a few fun facts about yourself. So just people are like, again, they feel like they know you better, and they're more excited to open future content from you because it's not just like another quote unquote marketing email from a big brand.
I've heard a lot of different like theories on this too, or like different ways that people go about email. Some are just like keep it 2 lines of just text, no images in case the image breaks or anything like that. As far as like, the actual length of the email, what's your favorite? What do you see has the biggest feedback?
I think especially in the realtor space, people put way too many images. So if you want to think, we're getting like really into the weeds here. I love it though. If you think about like Google and Yahoo and all their spam filters, like if your aunt sent you an email, they're really not going to want to filter that out. And what is your aunt going to send you? It's going to be like a couple lines of text, maybe just a plain signature. She's not going to be sending you 9 images and like all these fancy things in the email. So like Gmail, Google, whatever is very unlikely to filter out those emails. So the more you can, I mean, a couple of pictures are fine, but the more you can make it seem like an email from their aunt than an email from this big marketing agency with like a crazy header and like a million different images and all these buttons. Like it's a lot easier for Gmail or Yahoo or one of these other mailing providers to flag that. So I always think in that context, I'm like, okay, Google obviously doesn't want you missing emails from your family members. So like, how can you make it as family membery, if that's an adjective, as possible so that they're never going to block that from sending to the person you're trying to get the email to?
I am ratchet. I curse way too much
He knows
consistently.
that by now.
Okay. Well, I haven't cursed up until this point, I don't think. Sometimes I do it and I don't realize. But anyway,
I
I've
was
like
following your guys' lead. I'm down to start cursing, whatever.
Okay, so that was the old me, and then I moved to Kentucky where everyone is like almost said it again, an angel. And so I'm trying to practice, and the listeners are holding me accountable. Anyway, now you're filled in. You're in the fold. So my question though is, people are opting in to your newsletter, and what is the cadence? So they get that welcome, but how frequently is it on a schedule, or you're like, whenever I think of something cool, and are you the one who's writing it? How much do you use with AI? Talk about all that.
It's going to depend industry by industry. So I'm trying to think realtors specifically. Like if someone signed up to your list, you probably don't want to be hitting them with an email every single day. But in some industries, that makes sense. Like if you're someone who's selling some kind of education product, whether that's a course or an ebook or whatever, it might make sense to hit them up for like 3 or 4 days in a row and just deliver a crazy amount of value because you are really trying to push the sale in, say, day 5 and beyond. But for you guys, you can't really force someone to buy a house on day 5 or sell a house on day 5. It's probably just unrealistic because like the time to action, and you guys could probably speak to this better than I could, like how long it actually takes someone to take a realtor type of action. Again, I don't even know what those might be, but the only ones that come to mind are like buying or selling a house, or maybe it's like getting pre-qualified. I don't know. But yeah, it totally depends on the industry that you're in. And so like if there is a longer cycle for the person to take action, I would not just like hammer them with a zillion emails. But if you're in an industry where you want them to take action quick over the next week or so after joining your list, like again, if you're selling a course or mastermind or whatever, then it might make sense sending them like an email every single day until you hit them with the offer.
Makes sense. It depends. The most classic answer for every question.
Yeah. The most lawyery. I'm like, it depends.
Yeah. We ask all of our guests to provide listeners with a golden nugget that everyone can find it at theagentgoldmine.com. What did you bring for our people today, Cody?
So I put together this thing I like to call the passive income guide. And it's basically just what's worked well for me has been documenting exactly how I've done it in my journey. So what I did was I just put together the 3 main ways I make passive income was digital products, real estate, and investing in the stock market. And it's like a 17 or 18 page ebook, 100% free, that you guys can go and download. And it's basically just kind of outlining my journey and exactly what I did to now have these 3 passive income sources fund my lifestyle and more. So that's what you guys are getting in the gold mine from me today.
Beautiful. Love it. Okay. Cody, at this point, is there anything that we didn't ask you that we skipped over, big picture lessons learned that you think is really important that you want to share with our audience?
I mean, there's so many things that come to mind. So many things that come to mind. I do know a lot of realtors personally, or agents personally. I don't know what the correct term is. I know it's like the rectangle and square thing, right? Like not all agents are realtors, but all realtors are agents or something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
See,
Nailed
shows
it.
my real estate agent prowess here. But I think a big mistake I see in a lot of roles that are 1099 is people do not think about their financial futures whatsoever. So if you're not forced into some kind of retirement saving vehicle, and there's a lot of hate in the real estate industry on 401ks. I totally see that on Instagram and social media. But I think that you should at least be investing somehow in your future. If you don't have the money or you don't have interest in buying your own rental properties, maybe that's investing in REITs. Maybe that's like opening a brokerage account and buying shares of like the total US stock market. Whatever that thing might be, like please start setting aside money, whether that's make up rules for yourself, whether it's a percentage of your income, or I know a lot of your income is sporadic. So maybe it's 1 deal per year. I just shove the full commission from that deal into some kind of retirement account for the future. Because I think a lot of agents, they just, they start small, they're making like 40K and then 100 and then 200 and then 500. And the whole time they haven't put $1 away for themselves. They're just buying the next level up car and the next level up house. And so unfortunately, I see so many people in this industry that I think, like you guys talked about at the beginning of this episode, it's all about being flashy. And like people think that the flashier they are, the more money they're going to make. But like you're just setting yourself up for failure in the future if you're not investing in yourself. So please, especially if you're not forced into saving in retirement accounts or anything like that when you're 1099, like just make sure you know how the personal finance side of this stuff works, because you are dealing with large sums of money. I know agents who have made like 100K plus on one deal. And if you don't know what to do with that 100K plus, then you're going to be in for a rude awakening in a decade or two from now when you are kicking yourself, wishing you started investing in your 20s or 30s.
That's perfectly said. I remember when I was purchasing my first or second property, one of the agents that was helping me, because at the time you didn't have to sign on with just one, was like close to 80 years old. And I remember thinking like, holy crap, this is before I ever considered being a real estate agent. And I was like, why is she working? Like I hope that she's working because she wants to and not because she has to. And I think that may have been my struggle with becoming a real estate agent. I was like, I don't want to be that, like back in the back of my mind. But Cody, thank you so much for being on our show. If and when people have questions for you, what's the best way for people to either reach out or find out more about you?
I'm on all the social medias at Cody D. Berman. And then if you guys are interested in digital products specifically, goldcityventures.com is my digital products brand.
And can you name your podcast again for the
The
listeners?
Financial Independence Show is my podcast for those who want to learn about retiring early and hear from real people who did it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. For the listeners out there, be a bro and share this show. If you're on a 50-50 split, it's time to rethink your brokerage. At eXp, the split is 80-20. And once you cap, you keep 100%. We show you how to get there faster. I'm Ali Garced, or Ali the Agent. My sponsor, Shelby Johnson, and I each close over 40 deals a year. We are full-time agents actively producing, and everyone in our upline is an icon agent. When you name us as a sponsor at eXp, you get full access to all of our systems and checklists and templates, our 200K GCI playbook to help you make 200K your first year, direct mentorship and direct access to us, no huge group calls. We also help agents add another stream of income, which is rev share. We will help you with all the tools and trainings you need to build revenue share that will help you retire early. If you're interested in building an actual business, book a call at theagentgoldmine.com.